All right, so to summarize where we're at, I've cleaned this page up a little bit, erased the things that aren't valid, and just left the stuff that I want you to be thinking about. And that's this idea that when we assign a derived class object to a base class type of reference variable, we end up with a situation like this, where we have a reference. I did forget to delete one thing, so let me do this right here while I'm at it. We said this is the one we can't have. Okay, so there we go. Now we have an accurate picture. We have this reference variable of this type of class referring to this object of this type of class. And we end up with a situation where we have this important concept to understand. That's that the reference type, the reference variable type, determines which methods can be called. Okay, what methods can be called. So we can only call methods, in this case, of a checking account class, the limited set of methods in that class. And the object type, like over here, determines what the actual data is that gets stored. So since it's a rewards account, we actually have all of the data for a rewards account object. So we're going to look now at how this affects when we have multiple objects of different types, derived class and base class objects, all stored in one collection. One array list, or array would work, but we're going to look at array lists. And I want to draw, before we look at the code, or actually I'm going to jump to the code real quick and look at the example we're going to look at. So here we have this, again, this array list that we started looking at earlier, all accounts, that stores checking account type class references, reference variables. But what we actually add to that list are some checking accounts. Okay, we're adding a checking account here. But in other cases, we're adding the derived class object, the rewards accounts. So let's kind of draw a picture of what that's going to look like. And as usual, I'm going to draw kind of an array list to look very much like the way we've always drawn arrays. Okay, it's got something like this where you have various slots that can be accessed by an index, 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Right? Now we know that array lists are a little different in that they actually start out with size 0 essentially, and then as you add things to it, it grows. But I'm still going to draw it like this just to make it easier to visualize for now. And by the way, little side note, okay, all of this, okay, that I'm drawing horizontally to draw like this is actually, if we wanted to really draw it down here in memory, okay, you draw it basically vertically. Every one of these slots would essentially be another place to put something here in memory. But that's besides the point for right now. I think it's easier to just think conceptually about an array list or an array like this. So what's actually going in each of these slots if this is a checking account, an array list of checking accounts? So if we have something like this, okay, or it could be the same thing if we had an array of checking accounts. Either way. So that little word right there, phrase right there, inside of these angle brackets means what type of thing is being stored in here. So you can essentially think of this as checking account objects being stored in here. But now you know that that's not totally true. It's actually references to checking account objects. So again, I know we're getting into the details, but this is going to pay off in just a minute, and we're almost to the end of what you really need to understand here in some of this kind of complex material. So hang in there. So we know that what's actually stored in here are references, like we have over here, to these objects that are out there on the heap. So as we start adding checking account objects or rewards account objects in here, we end up with things that look like this. So in slot 0, this is a reference. So this is basically an address that points to some other location where we have some object that has some data. And if the first object we create is a checking account, it's just got 3 variables: account ID, balance, and owner name. So if we look back at our code, okay, the very first object we create here is a checking account, Joe's checking account. It's got Joe's name, and he adds some money, and we end up with some different variables. But the bottom line is we end up with some things in here. We've got Joe and a certain balance and a certain account ID. Okay, then the next object that gets created, let's go look at it. okay, is a rewards account object. And it's got some information that a rewards account would have, including a monthly fee and points and things. And then we're adding that object to the array list. So after that object gets added to the array list, once again, we have a reference that is a reference type of checking account. But in this case, it's pointing to an object. Matter of fact, I'm not going to have enough space to draw it here. So let's see if I can make this work. This is going to be referring to an object that has more data because it's a rewards account object, right? And it's got account ID and balance and owner name, but it also has points and monthly fee, right? I'm running out of space, so I'm not going to draw all the details. But it has extra data. So once again, this array list, what does it contain? It contains reference variables of the checking account reference type. But what are they actually pointing to? Well, they can be pointing to either checking accounts or rewards accounts. Okay, one more time, one more variable. Now we created a third checking account. This is of the type checking account, okay, or a third object. So this is a type checking account. So if we go back after that gets added to the array list, we have another reference pointing to somewhere in memory, or once again, we have an object that only has an account ID, a balance, and an owner name. Okay, so in this case, this is a reference to an object of the type checking account. And as we looked at over here, this is okay, because the only methods we can call on these reference variables that are actually stored here in the array, okay, are the methods for the checking account class, since that's what type of reference variable they are. And all of these objects have all of the data needed for any of those methods. This one actually even has some extra data, okay, but all of them certainly have enough data to run the base versions of those methods we can call. So this is a picture of what this code is going to look like after we've created 3 of these objects of different types and added them to this array list.